My name is 𝗟𝗶𝗰𝗲-𝗀𝗃, and I'm pleased to moderate this second conversation on agroecology. I come from the Austrian Agency for Health and Food Safety, and together with my colleagues Karin Nistler, Philipp Hofe, and 𝗏𝗏𝗰𝗲, we are coordinating the technical aspects of these online conversations. And together with me is also Carla Breitz from Portugal. And agroecology stands for the European Partnership Accelerating Farming Systems Transition, Agroecology Living Labs and Research Infrastructures. It is a European research and innovation effort between the European Commission and 26 member states, associated countries and third countries, with a total of 70 partners. These conversations on agroecology will be one of the first steps towards strengthening agricultural knowledge and innovation systems for the agroecological transition by facilitating linkages between living labs and research infrastructures and their actors across Europe. We will have these conversations on a monthly basis throughout the 7-year partnership, except the summer months, July and August. And these conversations are aimed to enable the mobilization and networking of agroecology actors across Europe and beyond as we move towards 2030. So please use these conversations as a possibility to network with others and find new people to talk with or to communicate with, and engage in topics that interest you. And we are also very open for you giving us input in what kind of topics you would like to see in the future. So please do give us feedback at the end. Today we have two speakers, Korinna Varga from Hungary and Margriet Goris from the Netherlands, who will introduce you to the power of networks for agroecology. We will first listen to the individual presentations, 10 minutes each, and then you will all join in the discussion. We have saved a little bit of time after the talks to ask a couple of questions right after the talks, and after both of them, we will then open a discussion. You can write your questions in the chat while the speakers are speaking, or when the discussion starts, you can simply raise up your hand and say your question. This conversation will be recorded so that the recording can also be viewed by people who are not able to be here today. So if you are against that, please let us know. No objections. Thank you very much. And now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Korinna Varga. Korinna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And now I'm just sharing my screen. I hope that you can see it in full presenters mode. Right, great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about the European network of agroecology living labs and research infrastructures under the frame of the partnership. So essentially, my institution, the Hungarian Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, is responsible for the coordination of this network within the partnership, with the deputy leadership of INRAE. Just some essential information about the network. That's what I would like to start with. So, the aims of the network is, first of all, to connect and empower those place-based innovations. So place-based innovations in form of agroecology living labs, research infrastructures, and other open innovation arrangements at various scales throughout Europe in the production of new knowledge. We would also like to improve the access to and the availability of that vast amount of knowledge, data, experiences, and materials that have been created or have been accumulated by the different agroecology living labs and research infrastructures in order to foster information sharing between them. We would also like to support multi-stakeholder-based co-design of agroecology innovations, and hopefully with that, the upscaling of these innovations throughout Europe to contribute to the transition. And we would also like to reach a bit outside of Europe and to connect with and build relationships with other global networks. And under this, I mean agroecology related global networks or living lab research infrastructure relevant networks, in order to position ourselves in the international agroecology community, and also to contribute to science policy dialogues at various scales. But what the network actually do on the ground, and I listed here the most important activities that we foresee for the 7 years. First of all, the network will set up and also maintain an inclusion criteria system based on previous preparatory work that has been done by 2 preparatory projects of the partnership, the 𝗟𝗏 and AGROECOLOGY for EU. We will also put in place a membership and evaluation system, and also a mentor system, especially or targeted for the newcomers that are coming into the network year by year. We will have a governance scheme with a multi-layered structure. So we want to ensure that from very local levels, living labs research infrastructure is represented in this network, and they have a role in the governance. We will also put in place a strategy. First of all, co-create a strategy and an action plan and implement it. We will have a dedicated so-called ideation bed also within the network, where different living labs and research infrastructures can come together and ideate specific agroecology research topics based on their interest, and also to realize these research activities within the network. In order to foster better information sharing and networking and collaboration among the members, we would like to build an agroecology repository together with a collaborative knowledge platform to store and make available that vast knowledge that is out there and produced or have been produced already by the living labs and research infrastructures. Of course, we will collaborate with other international networks and projects. For that, we will do a global mapping, and based on that, we will put in place a networking strategy also. And lastly, we will monitor and evaluate our own performance and our contribution to the transition. And of course, we will ensure that our network is sustainable on the long run. So under that, I mean that after the partnership's lifetime, the network will be actually viable. So that's also an important activity that we will do. And everything that is listed here will be actually co-created together with the members and validated by the members, and also implemented by the members. So just some quick notes about the network's application timeline, because I think especially for you, for this audience, it might be important. So the network has been officially established. This May, actually, we just had an onboarding meeting with the members, with the first cohort, which is comprised of the pilot network members of the 𝗟𝗏 project, and also 3 living labs from the agroecology for EU project. So from the 2 preparatory projects of the partnership. We will have the first application wave into the network this December. And next year, April, after evaluation, we will onboard the new members. So they will be the second cohort, essentially. And we will repeat this process every year. So we will have these yearly application waves in every December until 2030. And we will have these onboardings in every April until 2030. 2030, essentially. But you will be informed about this through the AGROECOLOGY Partnership's website, but also through email communication as well, because we would definitely like to have a European-wide kind of application campaign for the network. And I don't really have too much time to talk about the important definitions that we use in the network. Not only because because of the lack of time, but also because these are under development still. But what I can highlight is, first of all, that we use the very generic, so our basis for defining the definitions for agroecology living labs and research infrastructures were the generic definitions for living labs produced by ENOL, the European Network of Living Labs, and for research infrastructures, the definition created by ESFRI, and later on the Commission also took over that definition. So these are the reference points, and also the two preparatory projects, especially already worked extensively on creating the specific characteristics and features of agroecology living labs and research infrastructures, which you can see here on my slide. I will not go through this, but the presentation will be available for you. And maybe in the discussion, this question might pop up again, but this will be the starting point. So these characteristics that you can see on my slide will be the starting point for our inclusion criteria, which is currently under development. So a couple of benefits that I wanted to highlight for being part of the network. So first of all, why it is good to join, to be actively part of the knowledge exchange, learning and information sharing opportunities between agroecology living labs and research infrastructures, especially if you host and run a living lab and research infrastructure. Also to ensure access to various agri-food stakeholders across the EU, from local to international levels, essentially, which also helps you to establish collaboration for transnational projects. Let it be the transnational projects or transnational calls launched under the AGROECOLOGY Partnership itself, or other type of EU-funded research projects on agroecology and living labs, but generally for networking. Also, the benefit might be also to take part in diverse co-creation processes for developing research ideas and topics that you can actually implement as joint research activities together with, of course, other living labs and research infrastructures in frame of the network. There might be the opportunity to also improve existing practices, methods and approaches, or contribute to the creation of new ones. So therefore contributing to cutting-edge agroecology research, at least on a European scale. And of course, having direct influence on the direction and the outputs of the network as well. A couple of expectations I listed here that I believe you need to know, especially if you think about joining the network at some point. The membership lasts officially from this point onwards until December 2030, so until the end of the AGROECOLOGY Partnership. But of course, the membership will not be discontinued because of the end of the partnership. So unless someone specifically requests that, it will be continuous. And as I mentioned previously, there will be a sustainability strategy in place. And the membership is on a volunteering basis in the network, but there's a budget dedicated to network activities, and also the travel and accommodation in case of physical meetings for the members, especially those members who are not beneficiaries of the agroecology partnership. Also, the expectation is essentially, I would like to highlight here two things. Providing your expert input, especially in relation to Living Lab, research infrastructure, experiences and insights into your activities throughout the 7 years, and also active participation in in-person network meetings, which will happen once a year. And also, of course, in the in-between online meetings, workshops, events, different surveys and programs that will be organized across the network. And lastly, how to join. So first of all, stay tuned for the network's inclusion criteria guidelines, which will be made public in September, this September, through the partnership's website. And then afterwards, just be ready to apply during the first wave, or if not the first wave, then the waves that are coming afterwards. And of course, in December, more information will follow on the specificities of the application. And just lastly, this is my last sentence, I would like to highlight that already existing living labs, agroecology living labs and research infrastructures can apply. So the network will not have any activities to create new living labs and research infrastructure, but will operate with already existing ones. And essentially with this, I would like to thank you for your attention and looking forward to the discussion part.
Thank you very much, Korinna. Very nice to get all these insights on the network that is right now being created. We have 2 minutes for questions. Do we have questions from the audience? Please feel free to just raise up your hand and go forward with your question, or you can type your question in the chat. While we wait, maybe Carla, you can take one of the prepared questions.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Korinna, for the presentation. And the aim of the Agroecology Living Languages and Research Infrastructures Network spans national, European, and international levels. How do you plan to co-construct the governance schemes with these multi-layered structures to consider these national, European, and international levels?
Yeah, so as mentioned before, the governance concept and scheme is currently under development. So many things relies on the inputs, opinions, and experiences of the members. And of course, this will be a dynamic process. So as new Living Labs research infrastructures join the network, they will also have the opportunity to shape and form the governance. So we currently don't have any specific structures. We have just ideas in mind that how local, regional, national levels can be represented in the governance scheme. But for example, for the national level, we would like to put in place national reference persons in every country that will ensure that we have continuous communication on the national level with these structures, with these open innovation arrangements, and therefore they can also help us and ensure the growth of the network from local levels and also from national levels. So far, this is the only thing that we are more or less certain that we would like to have in our governance scheme.
Thank you, Korinna. Marcelo and Heather, I have read your questions and we will save them for the discussion. Thank you very much for them. We will now move forward to our next talk, and Korinna will be with us on the discussion, so you will be able to ask questions from her later on as well. And our next speaker is Margriet Goris from the Netherlands. Margriet, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm Margriet Goris. I work as a sociologist at AgroSystems Research and at the chair group Rural Sociology of Wageningen University and Research. And in this presentation, I want to share some of the promising features of agroecology networks, but also some of the difficulties encountered in these networks. And I will base this presentation on the work done in the Agroecology for Europe project and also on current research projects. And first, I will highlight some of these promising features. Then I will elaborate on establishing the nationwide agroecology network living lab, which is also part actually of the agroecology living labs and research infrastructures network just presented by Korinna. So maybe that also gives a nice insight in some of these living labs she just presented. And then after that, I will go into the European network for agroecological food systems, which we established in the Agroecology for Europe project. So we can go to the next slide. So some of the promising features of networks is that it makes agroecology visible to very diverse actors at various scales. But we also know that, like, when you want to start with new practices, it starts with a new idea to do something differently, to rearrange resources, markets in a different way. And that requires a discursive space to do so. And this is what these networks offer. They provide this space to discuss these new visions, pathways, and it allows for cooperation. What it also shows, and what we especially also find out in the Agroecology for Europe project, that it provides possibilities for alignment. And this alignment of diverse groups can amplify the voice and the position of farmers, but also of other actors in the agricultural and food system. Especially if you ensure well the governance structure for representation and equitable distribution of power. And this alignment, it's not only in the interest of farmers to improve their position, but it's actually also in the interest of governments. We have noticed that, for example, the Dutch Ministry on Agriculture, they prefer to talk not with individuals and not with small organizations. So then this alignment helps in providing these bodies to talk with. And we can go to the next slide. And then to take you a little bit in the Dutch landscape. So what we did in the Agroecology for You project, we started with mapping, and here you see like a very rough historical overview of the development of agroecology in the Netherlands at different parts of the society, within the research, education, within the movements. And then when we go to the next slide, it's just to give impressions. Then you see that there has been alignment throughout the time among actors and between actors. So, for example, one of the main achievements of the last years is that small farmers organizations working on agroecology, such as the Biodynamic Association, the Community Supported Agriculture Network of the Netherlands, they all form together the Federation of Agroecological Farmers. So now they really represent a large group of agroecological farmers in the Netherlands. And this joint body of farmers organizations also takes part in the Farmers Council, which is a larger consortium of dark green farmers organizations who want to exchange knowledge. But they together formed an alliance also with, I got distracted by question. They formed, you know, like a broader consortium with initiatives on agroecology, and parallel to that, you have like, you see that diverse NGOs, they take the initiatives to create these alignments at national level. And so we saw like this very pluriform landscape in the Netherlands, where more and more alignments on agroecology are established. And then what we noticed when we were starting with the agroecology for Europe project, that, for example, one of these national-wide alliances, such as the Food Different one, they hardly have farmers on board. And whereas the other one, like the Farmers' Perspective, which is actually quite a recent one, they are mostly farmer-centered. So we thought there is like space for this multi-actor living lab at a national level. And that is what became the agroecology network, and which is also then taking part in the living lab network just presented by Korinna. The interesting thing is that their farmers said, but also the NGOs participating in this agroecology network, we also want the climate activists to participate. So I think this is quite a unique feature of this living lab, but also they wanted more diverse researchers on board. So they have like now also within this agroecology network, a research working group composed of researchers of many different universities across the Netherlands, but also of farmers who want to work on innovations. Then we can go to the next slide. But this formation of this agroecology network, I also can tell it was not easy, and I think that's also good to share this lessons learned. I think it has been successful. It's still existing and it's working, but it's not an easy thing. And that's because the different actors on table, they all have different strategies. Whereas, for example, researchers, they're very much interested to talk to government officials. So they are really into rightful resistance. When, for example, the farmers, they already have their mind and heads full, you know, with farming, and they see their farming in a different way as a political act. That's what like 𝗟𝗶𝗰𝗲 calls resistance of the third kind. So by farming differently, that's already like their strategy. And then we have like the climate activists, you know, who just want to go on the street. They are fed up with the talks. They don't see any improvement happening. So very, very diverse strategies in one living lab. But actually what we have found out when we were researching this in Brazil is that all these different strategies are mutually supportive. So, for example, the researcher or the NGO who is talking with government officials, he can have this talk or can have success in this talk because of this critical mass outside, the mass on the street who want to say, no, we want different policies, or they can do that because there are already farmers who are saying, no, we want to farm in an agroecological way. So these different strategies are mutually supportive, but it takes something for these diverse actors to actually value and recognize these different strategies. Well, next to these different strategies, there is also different capacities, funding, organization cultures. I see I have to move on, so we can go to the next slide. And then we found, like in more recent research on regenerative agriculture, on food networks. But also like this living lab with multi-actor approach, it's not always the holy grail, especially farmers who are at the start of transitioning. The first thing they want is like a better price or risk sharing to be able to make this transition. And then when you look at these living labs, you never see that there is enough farmers on board who all deliver to the same retailer or buyer. So you never can create a critical mass where they can collectively, as a group of farmers who all have the contract with the same retailer buyer, can say, we need this in our contracts. And it's not always a better price, but we need, for example, space to grow in a different variety of potatoes, which is more resistant to Phytophthora. But this alignment of farmers based on a joint buyer retailer, it's never happening. And actually there is space in the European Union, you know, to come to this better price agreements based on joint sustainability goals. So there's actually space which we don't take. And I think this is a nice point for discussion. Then maybe go to the last point, like the update about ENAF. So in the Agroecology for Europe project, it's the next slide. We established a European network for agroecological food systems, and in complementarity to the Living Lab and research infrastructure network, we thought, well, let's then build a more like a farmer steered network, whereas the other Living Lab network is more like researchers steered or more focused on research. This was an attempt to build it on the basis of representation of diverse networks working on agroecology. And then, like, also this was not an easy effort, I can tell you. We can go to the next slide. There were like a lot of groups interested, but then you don't want to build too many different networks at a European level parallel to each other. So in the end, like the farmer groups who were in the steering group of this European network on agroecology food systems, they said, no, let's support the development of 𝗟𝗟 Europe and Central Asia. We can go to the next slide. And why they choose for this, because this is an official governance body on agroecology recognized by FAO. It has the representation of farmers, pastoralists, small-scale fisher people in Europe who always have been working with agroecology. So then we are now at the phase where the organizations in the steering group of ENAF asked 𝗟𝗟 Europe and Central Asia, how can we support this further development of 𝗟𝗟 Europe and Central Asia, for example, through becoming a supporting constituency or a working group. And I think the advancement of 𝗟𝗟 is that it really represents farmers across the globe. So when you had like the formation of the definitions, or like, it's not a definition, but on the principles on agroecology in 𝗟𝗟, that was in Mali in Africa in 2050. You know, there were like all the large social movements on agroecology who really represent, for example, in Brazil, like, you know, 1.5 million of farmers through Movimento Sem Terra who participated in the formulation of this principle. So then you really can speak of a representative body, and that's why we in the end want to explore how can we support this representative body. So yeah, that's it. Very quick.
Thank you very much, Margaret. I know it's very challenging to tell all of this in 10 minutes. It's a very large network, and it has great connections as well. Thank you very much for sharing that. we have used up the time, so I will not allow individual questions for the talk right now, but we will come back to you. So please, Margaret and Korinna, do stay with us. We have got quite many questions in the chat as well, also comments. And I got, there was one question from Marcelo, who is from Brazil. He was especially asking about how small farmers and indigenous groups can enter this partnership and this network. This was maybe more for Korinna, but I think both of you can answer. I think, Margaret, you were already giving a little bit of ideas on how small organizations, how indigenous groups can be included. But Korinna, would you also like to comment on that?
Yeah, and I think I can answer to Joshua's question as well. It's quite similar. So the European network is planned for agroecology living labs and research infrastructures. So by default, these are open innovation arrangement. These are networks themselves, let it be local or regional networks themselves, that by default also work with upstream and downstream stakeholders. They should, especially if they want to call themselves agroecology living labs and research infrastructures. Therefore, small farmers, medium farmers, large farmers should be all involved in an agroecology living lab, because in order to have that innovation cycle that is from co-creation, experimentation, testing, and also evaluation. So that involves broadly these three main steps of the innovation cycle. The farmers need to be involved in order to create or improve new technologies, new innovations, products. So through the living labs, these stakeholders will be involved in the network. However, in the network itself, we ask for the individual living labs and research infrastructures to have at least one representative, a coordinator, a manager, whom we can have, of course, direct communication, who can participate in network events and in the different activities. But normally in the European network, these stakeholders will be represented.
Thank you very much, Korinna. Margaret, do you also want to comment on how you have been including small farmers in your network?
In the agroecology network, they were taking the initiative, and they had a majority of voice in the steering group of the agroecology network in the Netherlands. But then in the formation of this European network, it was quite difficult, I have to say, to start, because we were as researchers funded. There were hardly farmers organizations funded in these European programs. So then you start already like with that you're not with the same level of capacities on the table. So that took a lot of time, to come to a governance structure where also at the informal steering group of the further development of ENAF was by farmers organizations such as 𝗟𝗯𝗰𝗲 Campesina and Slow Food and some of the agroecology networks. But that's so that's still work in progress. But it's not easy with the European structures, who puts us in an unequal position with farmers organizations.
Thank you for that comment. We've also got a question from Heather about how big do you foresee the final network being? I think this is a question for the network within the partnership. How many living labs and how many research infrastructures?
Yeah, difficult to answer. I mean, based on our previous mapping and exploratory exercises in the preparatory projects, we definitely foresee at least 100 members in the network, but even more. Honestly, I think even more.
Very nice to hear. Great.
Also considering this aspect of the 𝗘𝗂 and the first wave that you will launch in December, can non-European stakeholders or non-European living labs and research infrastructures submit proposals? And the selection process for the submitted proposals, we already see that you are working in that, but what type of criteria you will put in the selection process?
Yeah. So the first question, no. Very simply, we at least in the first years, we don't foresee to open up the network to non-European living labs and research infrastructures. And it has a very simple reason before everyone comes at me for discrimination or something. It's not because of that. The reason is that first, I mean, there's a huge work to co-create the different operations and activities with the current members and also with the newcomers. So first, we would really like to see a solid network operations in place, and afterwards we might open up the conversation on involving non-European living labs and research infrastructures. But I think the name gives it away. So this is a European network of agroecology living labs and research infrastructures for a reason. But as mentioned, I'm not against opening up this discussion. The other question, the criteria, honestly, I don't want to get into details on the criteria because this will be publicly available. Hopefully in September, we will publish the guidelines for the criteria. This is currently under development together with the members and based on previous work from the two preparatory projects. So stay tuned for the guidelines.
Thank you. Thank you, Korinna. And I think just to comment for the international researchers and participants of this conversation as well, I think even though you would not be able to be part of the network, there is a lot of communication possibilities like these conversations where you can be engaged and where you can bring in your input and also enable this kind of learning from one another to both directions. So I hope we don't disencourage you. We also had a further question from Marcelo about other existing agroecology groups and networks. How well are those integrated in, for example, Margaret in the Netherlands or Korinna on the European level? Networks that have been mentioned are, for example, the Agroecology Coalition, a more global network, Agroecology Fund, Agroecology TPP, Agroecology Works, and SOCLA. Are these planned to be integrated into the networks?
Should I answer or Margaret? Right. So as mentioned, in the European network, we have a dedicated activity on that to seek collaborations with other relevant networks, projects, initiatives. And we will have also a networking strategy on the specificities, on the specific collaborative activities. So the simple answer is that we plan to work definitely with these agroecology groups, but I can't tell anything right now about the specificities. So definitely information sharing, even joint organization of events is might be on the plate. Yeah, first we would like to map these global initiatives.
Thank you.
Maybe then
Margaret,
I can add.
please do.
Yeah, so for like this European network for agroecological food systems, as its future is still unsure, because at the moment there's like this internal evaluation on the governance of Nalini, Europe, and Central Asia. So that takes time, and so in this new development of the governance, there it's proposed if members of interested members in this development of this European network for agricultural food systems, if they can participate in a supporting constituency or working group. So that's still to be seen, but Nalini, Europe, and Central Asian has like all kind of collaborations across the globe. So with that is then foreseen, and of course it's a national network on agroecology. Yeah, there is sometimes this international exchange to inspire the diverse actors in this agroecology network by our international colleagues, I would say. Yes, that's happening.
Thank you. Great to hear. We also got a question about the definition of agroecology. Oftentimes in Europe, the definition is largely based on the FAO principles. And there is a question how kind of diversity of ideas of the definition of agroecology is taken into account. What about situations like in Brazil, where there's a lot of indigenous and peasant people, or in Africa, maybe different principles are put in place? How is this diversity taken into account in the networks?
I can start with that one. I think that's also actually why the Agroecology Network in the Netherlands also choose to work with the Nalini Declaration, which is actually not a definition, but more like guiding principles. And it adds a few things to the FAO definition. For example, that they want to reverse unjust power relations, which is very essential for the farmers. But also like this aspect mentioned by Marta in the chat on spirituality. You see also with many farmers in the Netherlands that like their religion is actually the starting point for farming in an agroecological way. So this is very like inherent part of their agroecological practice. And so there these principles of Nalini, they recognize that this spirituality is very much part of the way they see agroecology. So I think it does more right, like to all the aspects what matter to the farmers engaged in agroecology, and for the European network, it's the same.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Margaret. Korinna, would you like to comment on that?
So in the network, we will not open the discussion, defining our own agroecology definition. So we build on the approaches that was laid down in the partnership. So essentially, we use the agroecology definition that was developed based on the principles of FAO, and also complemented with the high-level panel of experts principles as well.
Thank you. Then another question on also of then diversity of stakeholders and groups and individuals who become part of the networks for various reasons and with different kind of ideas in mind.
Yeah, I already elaborated a bit
kind of
on this.
Deal with the layers of different stakeholders.
Yes, I elaborated a bit on this already. That we had this very diverse ideas, strategies in the agroecology network in the Netherlands, and I think there you see that like this governance structure is really important. That the in the steering group, in the organization group, the farmers have the majority of voice. Otherwise, you get too much other interest on table, which which in the end lose like some of the farmers. So it's complicated. Also, like now with for example, Palestina, you see like the agroecology network takes a position, then some researchers step out. But if the network wouldn't take a position, the majority of farmers and activists would step out. So that's how it is. Yeah, so it's quite complicated.
Thank you. And please, members who have or participants who have asked questions, if you want to ask a follow-up question, if you want to give a comment, please do feel free to join in the discussion.
I have another one question for Marguerite, and it was a long story of cooperation among Dutch stakeholders, and that exemplified the power of building alliances to support the transition. But it's expected that European network of for agroecology food systems will now be consolidated through the partnership to avoid some duplicate networkings, or to duplicate also to efforts in this kind of mobilizing the living lands and also the research infrastructures. I don't know if this question is for Korinna or for Marguerite, but what I can see is a lot of initiatives with the same, not same, but similar objective.
I think enough has like really tried to look like for the added value to what to already, which is very much focused on research and innovation. And enough really has also tried an alignment of networks to have this amplified voice, or like a governance body to talk with, and now not to do things double, like we go for supporting 𝗟𝗟𝗃 Europe, Central Asia. And of course, we hope that through the partnership, there will become funds available to take this supportive role and to make 𝗟𝗟𝗃 Europe and Central Asia like a stronger governance body for the European Union to talk on agroecological matters.
Okay.
I actually completely support what you just mentioned, Carla. So, and it's not just enough, not with enough, but also there is the Soil Health Living Lab and Soil Health Lighthouses network under the Soil Mission. There is ENOL itself, the Global European Network of Agroecology Living Labs, also very strong in Europe. So there. And for example, the Food System Partnership will also develop living labs research, or work with the living lab research infrastructure, but rather just a living lab network. So there is this huge danger of duplicating activities, but more to engage the same actors. Therefore, creating this overburdening of different stakeholders, especially living labs, lighthouses and research infrastructures. I mean, that's why exactly we wanted to ensure with this very dedicated task to create these connections with these upcoming networks, or already existing networks, and join forces and try to root out these similar or activities that might cause duplication. So, but we right now in direct contact with the soil network and also with Enol to figure out how to work on that.
Thank you. I think as a final question, we touched upon the topic of spirituality that came up in the chat as well. Marta, if you want to comment on this in person, please do speak up. I would like to ask both from Korinna and Margaret. We've been talking about the power of networks. So how do you see, what's the role of agroecology networks in creating the narrative of farming? How do we see farming as citizens? How can the networks, how do the networks play a role there?
I think they provide this discursive space to come to a joint narrative, where, like, I think Marta or others in the chat stated, like, for example, in some of these narratives, there's like not so much attention for spirituality. Well, so in these networks where you have all these diverse actors on table, and then, you know, there is also space to include this spirituality part of the farmers in the narrative of this new formed network, because then you are all together on the table, hopefully with the same, you know, power, and then this allows also the inclusion of these diverse aspects that matter for all the actors involved, of which spirituality is one of them.
Thank you. Korinna, would you like to give your take on the question?
I actually, from the diversity point of view, I completely agree with Margaret. I think this is probably one of the most important thing. But what I would like to add is some very specific, especially from the Living Lab and research infrastructures perspective. So I think farming can be seen also as a kind of new way for creating very close connection between farmers, researchers, and other parts of the agri-food system. So this very close connection to see how our food is produced. So the Living Labs especially has this potential to show it through these networks, and also to from firsthand the customers, for example, see that not just from the practical side farming can be done, but actually innovations can be done on the field and involving the community.
Thank you very much, Korinna and Margaret. And thank you for all of you for such active participation in the conversation today. It was wonderful to see several questions coming up in the chat. Thank you very much for that. And please continue with those questions afterwards as well. You can give us feedback in the feedback form that will come to you later. And if you have ideas for coming conversations, we will be very happy to take those. A big thank you for the whole task group from agroecology, task 7.1, who's been organizing and planning this event, for the AGES team for organizing it, for Carla also from INIAV to be organizing, and for the speakers for the active participation. Thank you very much for coming today. We look forward to seeing you again on the third conversation for agroecology, which will be organized on the 25th of September. So we will now move to a summer break and wish you all a wonderful summer. I hope you will enjoy the cold or the heat, whatever you prefer. Try to relax. And we look very much forward to seeing you again in September. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Nice
Bye.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.